So you guys referred to me from Melissa, correct?
Yes.
Oh. And then you guys have Milo?
Yes.
Alrighty. And I just read over your form real quick. Looks like leash reactivity, like general leash pulling, and then I think, was it barking at dogs in the house or something?
Barking at dogs, like in general. So on walks, especially, like that's when, I mean, obviously he's like the most reactive. But then also, like if anyone comes near the front door or the back door, especially like if he hears, like right now, like if he hears any dogs barking, he'll run to one of the doors and then bark at the doors.
Okay. Is it like a hallway type of deal?
So the front, so there are both staircases, so not quite hallways, but okay. Yeah.
And how often does that happen? Like, will he always bark, or is it like on occasion he'll bark at the door?
If we didn't do anything, he would go every single time. Now, like we have started to like hear when those things are going to happen, and so sometimes like we'll try and distract him with like doing a command, or usually food, but or treats, but that would be about it. I'd say that's probably the only times he wouldn't.
Okay. How old is he?
Just over 1, estimated.
Any previous training?
So when we got him, he knew how to sit, and that was about it. And then we just finished with a Petco virtual training class, but I don't think that one went very well. Yeah.
A lot of it was stuff that we already knew.
Yeah.
So it was like,
I feel like it actually instilled some bad habits, because now I feel like he thinks like anytime he sits, like he should be getting a treat. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know they were doing virtual lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they have like a level 2 that was supposed to be for like leash reactivity, but they said we needed to do level 1 first. And so that was my original plan, but we quickly were like, maybe something else.
So were you guys using clicker training?
No.
You're just saying yes and giving treats?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of collar is he on?
So we recently got him an e-collar.
Okay.
We've switched quite a few times. So when we brought him home from the rescue, they had recommended a
like a harness.
What's it called? The one on the nose.
Oh,
gentle leader. But he hated that, like would bark and like try and get it off constantly. So like when walks were obviously already a problem. So then like the place that we take him for doggy daycare, that owner had recommended getting a martingale collar because he's slipped out of other collars before. So then we had that for a while. And then we switched to a prong collar. And then most recently, we just got an e-collar.
What model e-collar?
Called like dog hair. It just has like a beep function, a vibrate, and then a shock function.
What was the brand again? Dog what?
Dog care. I think.
How much was it?
Like 30-ish, thereabouts.
Okay. You're gonna want to return that.
Okay.
It's a waste of money.
It is. All right.
Yeah, I'll go over all that stuff with you, but was it on Amazon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definite waste of money. Anything else?
As far as like, I guess.
What are your goals with Milo here?
Mm-hmm. So definitely, like being able to like walking him easier would be great. And then I guess just like also like ease, like less stressful when there are other dogs around. And then maybe like when guests come over as well.
Okay. Yeah. And he's social, right? Because he goes to daycare.
He does, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Has he ever had any like scuffles or anything? Like if he like met a dog while in reactivity on the leash, would it ever escalate?
I feel like as soon as he is allowed to be next to the other dog, like he calms down and he's totally fine. But but like obviously like a lot of other people then like don't want their dogs to meet up with him if he's freaking out.
Yeah, because he's throwing a tantrum essentially.
Mm-hmm.
We do go to like dog parks, I'd say every other weekend, and I feel like sometimes he'll be like antsy outside the dog park. Once he gets inside,
I feel like he's usually fine. Like I don't know. He definitely like humps a lot of other dogs. I feel like that's usually why we would have to separate him, but not like, I feel like not aggressive.
Never gets
behavior.
into like fights. Never like.
Although I feel like sometimes he like our friends have a dog that's like a couple years older, so like Milo usually has like a little bit more energy than that dog does, and so like when that dog wants to like lay down and rest, Milo will like nip at him or like bark right in his face to like try and get him to play again. But I feel like that is it. Not that that's like a good thing, but
I know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this seems like pretty standard stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. What kind of breed is Milo, or what mix?
So the rescue guessed that he was a lab and a cattle dog. The vet thinks that he's probably a lab and a husky, but we don't know for sure.
Sure. So what you're dealing with here is just overstimulation stuff. Okay, it's super common, which is leading to the reactivity, which leads to the humping, which leads to nipping and barking in the dog's face because he's getting frustrated. So some dogs have a hard time self-regulating. So like, let's say Milo would have been raised in the litter with his mother, right? The mother teaches the puppies how to regulate by correcting them. So like, if a puppy gets out of line or is annoying the mother, she would nip or bite at them. Not to be aggressive, but that's their version of spanking. Okay. And so then the puppy starts to learn that there's certain behaviors that get corrected, and then starts to like, develop their personality, if you will, in that manner. But what happens a lot of times, and I'm sorry, what age did you get Milo at?
We got him like 3 months ago, so he was still right around 1.
Okay. So, and has he been at the rescue since a pup, or?
No, he was only there for a couple weeks, and he was at a shelter before that. So like the rescue picked him out from a shelter. And then,
okay.
So we don't know before that though.
Sure. To make things easier, like we'll just say that like, Milo was at a shelter or born at a shelter, whatever. And once the puppies are born, they tend to like either find fosters or remove them or whatever. And what happens is, since he's not with his litter mates or his mother anymore, he's not getting consequences. He's not being disciplined because a lot of people get puppies at 2 months, take their puppies home, and the puppy's being a little menace, chewing on things, barking at things, jumping all over the place, and they're just thinking that's what puppies do. And I go, that's what puppies do if you allow them to. And it goes unaddressed. So then this puppy never learns rules and boundaries, and it just becomes this little tyrant. And eventually that tyrant gets bigger. And then you have a dog like Milo, who doesn't have the capacity to turn off. Okay. So it's the most common thing, just because people think they can't discipline their puppies, which is incorrect. That's just, the positive only aspect of dog training. That's their mentality on things, and that's completely wrong. So it's okay, because this type of stuff is actually easiest to fix, in my experience. Unless you happen to have, which can happen. I actually have a dog like that right now. He's at my daycare today, where you just happen to have a very drivey dog. Okay, it can happen, but it's very rare. Okay, so a drivey dog, like for instance, this dog that we have here, Jack, very driven for like squirrels and stuff, and needs a lot of power and consistency. And then by power, I mean e-collar power, to keep him in line. But as soon as you give him permission, he should go. Okay, so that's just his nature. Most dogs, it's just the lack of discipline. And when you start to discipline them, they start to have a calmer demeanor, because now rules are being put on them. Okay, and now it's not a free-for-all. So in your case, the way I'd go about addressing this is, the first thing I would teach Milo is how to walk my style. Okay. And I mean, maybe you met Winnie or the Winnies. There's the Chocolate Lab Winnie and the Golden Winnie. Then there's Nash and there's Shadow and there's Roxy and then Luna. Now, I myself have a very tight heel the way I teach it. Whether or not the owner reinforces it to that degree is a completely different topic. Okay. But in my style of heel, if I take one step, the dog takes one step. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. When I stop, they automatically sit. And this is what they completely slack leash. And I don't care what the environment is. I don't care if you're walking over through Travis Park. I don't care if you're walking past one of Milo's dog friends. He's glued to that hip. Okay. And that one exercise will most likely fix a bulk of your problems. Okay. Because it's not the heel, it's not the obedience that's fixing the problem. It's the discipline. It's the consequence. It's the contraction. It's the e-collar. Okay. Mm-hmm. So think of the e-collar as your ability to bite Milo at the press of a button. Okay. So in most cases, when I come in, and I actually train Ruthie as well. Ruthie's a little, I think, golden doodle that looks like a little wiry terrier. But the physicality behind how we teach the obedience is actually what helps settle dogs down. Okay, because now he's being nipped, and now he's being bitten for things that he shouldn't be doing. Okay, and then you're giving him direction, saying you don't do that, you do this, and that starts to calm dogs down. Okay, so growing up, I was raised old school. I was spanked. So like, if my mom was like, "Don't do that," when in the very, very beginning, she's like, "Don't do that," it was just, "Don't do that," right? But being a stubborn little kid, and I kept doing it, and eventually I got spanked. Now, when she said, "Don't do that," the meaning was totally different. Because now I'm like, well, I could potentially be spanked if I don't listen.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Right? So it's the same thing for dogs. When they live their life and you've said, no, don't do that and all that stuff, but you've not given them consequence in a manner that he understands and can rationalize, doesn't mean anything. Okay. And like when he was fighting against the gentle leader and barking, whatever, and you switch to something else, like technically he won that battle. Right? Because like, this thing sucks, I don't like it. Whereas I just work the dog. I use gentle leaders for puppies under 6 months. It's fine. But after 6 months, I always tell everybody, just go to e-collar because that's realistic. But either way, like I will make the dog submit to the tool. They're not going to get their way, because then that just reinforces all the other problems. The martingale I'm not opposed to, especially if he was like a little Houdini and like able to slip out of stuff, because that's just for security. The prong collar is a better step up. If fitted correctly, it should not slip over a dog's head. Plus you have correctional power. But in some cases with the prong collar, if the dog is a bit too dense or physically resilient and you try to correct them with the prong collar, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's been a lot of cases where we've used like the martingale or the prong, and he'll just continue to pull, and it's like I can hear he's really struggling. He's like just trying to fight it, like just continuing. And it's like, okay.
Because what happens is the brain is overloaded, and it doesn't take into consideration like that he's like either choking himself, or if the prongs are on, the tools are misleading because they'll say like stops leash pulling or whatever. So then I think most dog owners put it on thinking like, I just put this on them and then I just don't have to do anything. But with every one of those tools, you have to do something, okay, including the prong collar. So same thing with the e-collar. Like we would have to teach him what it is in order for him to understand how it turns on and how it turns off. It wouldn't just be like you put it on him, and then when he does something you don't like, you zap him and then hope that he figures it out. There's a lot more to that process. And you can potentially screw your dog up if you approach it the wrong way, by making him more neurotic or making them very anxious because they don't understand how it works. And I had that happen recently with 2 clients. They were self-training their dogs with the e-collar and going about it completely incorrectly. And when I showed up the dogs, which is like these anxious wrecks, because they were just like, this thing just comes out of nowhere and I don't know how it works. So then as soon as I came in and then gave them the appropriate education on how to apply the e-collar, the dog started to calm down. because then they understood like, oh, this is how it works, and this is how it turns on, and this is how it turns off. So then they're not sitting there wondering like, is it going to happen right now, and it's just going to come out of nowhere. It was something that they would understand that they ultimately control, okay, by their behavior. The reason why I say return that one you got from Amazon is because one, they crap out really fast. You can have it for a month, and next thing you know, you're ordering a new one. The other thing is the quality of them is not good. The professional grade e-collars, which makes it sound super fancy. It's just, you want a good solid e-collar. Is the cheaper ones tend to fall in line more with what we call a shock. Okay. And it's not that you're like literally shocking your dog. It's just the way that the stim is delivered is very different than a professional level one. Okay. So I had a client that had most likely probably that same model of e-collar that you have, and it went to 100 or 99 or something. And it was on 4, and I had it on my hand, and I was like, let me feel it. And they remoted me on 4, and my hand went like this. Okay. On 4 out of 100. Okay. The collars that I use, you'd have to be like, 60, 80 before your hand does such a big contraction.
Yeah, I got up to like maybe 50, and I was like, all right, I can't go anymore because it's like starting to hurt my hand.
So the professional level ones, you're going to get intensity, but it's more so a muscle contraction and not like a shocking feeling. It's if you're familiar with the muscle or stim therapy, TENS unit. So the one that Melissa uses for Nash, the Doctra, that one is like a TENS unit, okay, where it's just a muscle contraction. And then, of course, the higher you go, the more uncomfortable it does become. But then after the contraction is done, you don't feel anything, okay? With that cheaper one that I mentioned earlier, for like 15 minutes, my hand felt kind of weird. There's just kind of like a residual sensation. That shouldn't happen, okay? So the e-collars that we use are very fine-tuned. They go up to 127, which just allows us to really just dial into your particular dog's personality or temperament type. So like, for like cheaper brands, like some of them only go to 10, for example. 10 and 127 would be the same. I just have 117 more divisions, okay? So for the 1 to 10 collar, if you're at 3, your dog is not listening, but then when you go to 4, your dog is yelping, right? So 4 is too high, but 3 is too low. Whereas with my collar, 30, 40, 35, 34, 36, I can really just dial in and get it to the specific dog that I'm working with, okay? Questions so far?
Where do we get that collar?
Amazon.
It's still on Amazon. Okay.
Yeah, Maria would send you the information, and I'll ask a few more questions about Milo, and then I'll give that to you.
Okay.
We do them on Amazon. They're more expensive, but you get what you pay for when it comes to these devices. They'll last you for years. Okay, so like I've had mine for 8 years, no issues. So it's an investment up front, but you're going to be having it for a long time. Also, it's fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the receiver. And depending on your dog's size, it's anywhere between half a mile to a full mile range in terms of, connection and all that stuff. Okay. Other questions?
None for me.
So let's say you could have the life that you wanted with Milo, right? And don't worry about like, if we get there type of stuff. Like, just tell me, if you could have what you wanted with Milo, like what would your life look like?
So I guess for me it would be like we can go like take him for a walk, not be like concerned about like seeing like other dogs on walks.
Like I feel like we're almost, I don't think we're there yet, but like we're getting to the point where like we start to like look out for those triggers. Like we look for other dogs, we look for birds on the walk. Like not that we necessarily avoid those, but like I am like ready with something to distract him, or like I'm trying to make sure I can like gauge how he's feeling ahead of that. And I would just like to have walks where like I don't have to look for every single thing on the walk,
Sure.
I feel like that's a big one. And then like that we like that when we want him to relax and lay down, like if it's like the end of the night, that like that's what's happening. And for me, for sure, also, and this is more recently that he's been doing this, but like when guests, like if we have anyone come over, I feel like he gets really amped up when we have someone come over, except for maybe like 2 or 3 people that he's seen more regularly over the past few months. Yeah, so a little bit less stressful for those things as well.
Okay.
I feel like those are my main ones.
Yeah, pretty much for me too.
Okay. So so this is all pretty simple stuff. Okay. So the reason why I ask is this was going to help me kind of give you an idea of like just length of time and then cost and all that stuff. Okay.
Okay.
These are pretty, I would say like the average dog goals, if you will. So you're like right at the 6-week program, which I think is the same one that Melissa did. So the way I would structure this out is in those 6 classes, the first 2 would cover heel, okay, which is the leash walking stuff. This is going to correct the leash pulling. This is what's going to correct the, walking past dogs, not having to worry about birds. So he's got some prey drive. And then the reactivity. Okay. So heel is supposed to fix all that stuff. Now, the discipline behind the heel can also help resolve, like, for instance, the relaxing at night, right? Where he's still on go and you're like ready to like go to bed.
Yeah.
Because the leash walking exercise helps teach dogs how to turn off. Okay.
Yes. I feel like he does not know how to do that.
Correct. So a lot of the stuff will be indirectly affected by the heel. And then you would tell me what's not affected by it, right? So like after that second class, when I see you for that the third class, I would ask you like, how's everything going? And you'll tell me I can walk past birds and squirrels and dogs, no reactivity. He's calm. He'll just keep walking. But then you might say, but he still is amped up before bed. And I go, okay, no problem. I'm going to send you some videos because that's a simple thing. And you're going to do this when that happens. Okay. And then we'll cover other stuff because then it's just correcting him inside the home to teach him that behavior is not allowed anymore. Right. Like for me growing up, if I got too loud with playing with my toys or something, my mom would just say, take it outside. Okay. She would let me play in the house, but then when it got a little too loud, she'd say, take it outside. Or if my friends came over, she'd just like, go play outside. She wasn't going to have, 3, 4 boys running around the house screaming and yelling. Right. So it's kind of the same thing for the dog is, if he's used to like playing tug with you and all that stuff, or you trying to distract them with like, quick training or treats and stuff like that, you've essentially created this cycle of needing stimulation. Right? And he just needs to learn like, hey, you're not going to bark at the door. You're not going to bark at that door. When we go to sleep, you're not going to jump on the bed. And all of that is simply correcting the behavior. Okay. So like if you like, let's say there was another dog in the home and barking at the door bothered that other dog, which really doesn't really bother dogs. But if it did, it would just bite them. Okay. It would say, boom, stop barking at the door. Okay. If the dog wanted to go to sleep and Milo still wants to play, the dog would just bite him and say, I'm not going to play anymore. Cut it out. Right. If Milo tried to mount that dog, the dog would bite him. Don't mount me. It's very simple. Right. Yeah. So obedience, we need to teach it because he's not meant to like sit and stay and down and stuff. Dogs aren't meant to do that. That's human psychology created so that we can control our dogs. Behavior, however, is something that dogs even do amongst themselves. So if he gets out of line at the dog park and pisses off a dog, the dog would bite him and say, don't do that to me. Right? That's the conversation. So inside the home, I would give you another means of correcting Milo for things that you didn't want. So if he jumped on you, or if he barked at you for attention, or if he barked at the door, or if he is running around before bed, and you just want to say like, don't do that. It's really just consequence. That's all it is. Okay. So aversives are meant to stop behaviors. Okay. Treats and positive reinforcement is meant to so that you see behaviors again, right?
Mhm.
I say sit, you put your butt down, good boy, do it again. That's what that means, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But positive reinforcement sucks and doesn't work for stopping things.
Yeah.
And like they'll tell you like, oh, when your dog's not barking, give him a treat. Dogs don't think that way. He doesn't think like, oh, if I keep my mouth shut, I get something.
Yeah.
It's complicated of a thought process. Okay.
Yeah.
Dogs learn better with I barked and then there was a consequence. So I'm not going to bark.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and like the stuff that you'll read online and everything will say like positive only, like, you know, it's BS. It's a bunch of lies.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to it. Like it's great for puppies under 6 months. You know, I'm not opposed to incorporating it with training.
Mhm.
But then the problem is, like I had a lady here with 2 dogs that just started training with me, and she kept insisting on using food. And I told her no. She's like, I'm not going to do it. Like, because it doesn't make it too complicated for you. And sure enough, she had her first lesson, and she's like, oh, geez, I see why you didn't use food, because this was already complicated as it is, except it was effective. You know,
Right.
so it's simple. Once you learn it, it's super simple. But in the beginning, because you don't know what to do, right? Your dog doesn't know what's happening. I'm the only one who does know what to do. It's
Mhm.
complicated, but as soon as you figure it out, the first class is always the hardest. It's easy.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's effective. It's immediate. So like with Nash, I wish I would have filmed Nash's session because he was a
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
lady.
Yeah,
That's what we've
Melissa's
heard.
told us stories about how difficult he was before, you know,
Yeah.
before he got some training. And it sounds like
Melissa actually told us too. She was like, "Oh, compared to Nash, like Jess is gonna have no problem with Milo." And I was like, "Okay, like that is so reassuring because like when we were having those other training sessions, like I would be like embarrassed because like the trainer would like call Milo out and be like, "You guys need to make sure he's running more. You need to like,
No.
I don't know, like do all these
Yeah.
other things." And I was like, I mean, Mitch would take him on like 5-mile runs. I'm like, I don't know, like that. It's
Yeah.
not gonna do it.
So that's the thing about positive reinforcement is that it's not realistic, right?
Mhm.
Now I'm not opposed, and I tell people, yes, exercise your dog. Otherwise, you know, like if you didn't want to do that, like you should have got to go to fish or something like that, right?
Right.
However, too much emphasis is put on exercise.
Yeah.
When it's really about discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had a client, and actually that lady I just told you about walks her dogs 4 hours a day.
Oh man.
wow.
Yeah. Okay. And I asked her, and I said, is this by choice or is this because you think you need to do it for your dogs? And she's like, well, I do it so my dogs would behave better. And I go, but are they behaving better? And she says, no. So I'm like, why are you doing it? Okay. So, but people get stuck in this cycle, right? Like maybe it'll work one day. I go, nope. Because if it would have worked, it would have worked like that. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I actually just made a post about this on my social media on Instagram where I said, you know, if positive reinforcement is the best method, which a lot of people argue in the positive only, if positive reinforcement is the best method, then why aren't there more well-trained dogs, and why aren't there less dogs with behavioral issues? Because
Mhm.
it's the most common and the most accepted and widely used approach to dog training is positive reinforcement. So if everybody's doing it, why aren't there more well-trained dogs? Right? And then they'll put things out there like, oh, you know, you're not trying hard enough, you're not putting time into it, you're not exercising your dog enough, blah, 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 blah. No, the answer is it's because you're not giving your dog consequence. That's all it is. Okay, that's why I'm here. I've been here now 10 years. You know, that's why I have a job, because if their methods did work, there would be no need for me, the bad guy. Okay. So I get really worked up when it comes to this stuff because it's BS.
Yeah.
So the way with the six classes, the way I picture this working out is the 2 classes on the heel. We see what that fixes. Okay.
Mhm.
Come the 3rd class, that's happening right there, you know, that may also be affected in those 2 weeks. If it's not, no big deal. I'll say, this is how we're going to address it. Here are some videos. You start working on that. We're going to continue with the obedience stuff because behavior is simple. Okay. Behavior is simple. He does something you don't like, consequence to stop the behavior. That's all it is. Okay. So like barking, telling them to sit doesn't help the barking.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just have a dog that's sitting while they're barking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So I don't care what he does. I just want him to not bark.
Right.
Super simple. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So after that third class, which we'll kind of, we'll focus on behavior if needed, we'll start working on recall. Okay, which is come when called. Because heel and come when called are the two most important commands every dog should know. Okay. Recall is typically another 2 classes. Okay. With the last 2 classes, we could cover, for instance, the guest thing. There's 2 ways about it. One is a stationary command, which we call place. Place is go here, don't move, and it's don't move for the next 4 hours. If that's what you want, and if that's what you need. Okay.
Yeah.
For some people, it's just go here, don't move until all my guests are here, and once you're calmed down, I'll let you coexist. Right. And then, like, let's say he gets excited again because the guest goes, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" Right? And he starts getting jumpy, and then he jumps. You just correct it, because telling him to sit doesn't fix the jumping. You're just masking it. Okay? You just want to teach him when you jump, there's a consequence. And he goes, "All right, well, I'm not going to jump then." And the last class would be like most likely like an overview, where we review everything, unless there's something else you'd like to cover. But in most cases, it's an overview, but sometimes if the client is like really confident in what they've learned, or just like teaches more stuff. And I go, okay, well, then here's the next thing that we can cover. Okay. Because this is a pretty simple case. Okay. It's really just a lack of discipline. So again, don't think it's the obedience that's fixing the problem. It's the consequence from the remote collar.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make that clear. Questions about any of this stuff?
I guess like how like when we're scheduling, like are these weekly classes, times, or is that like something we discuss later?
Correct. So if you have like a regular, like, a fixed 9 to 5 schedule or something like that, you would be in contact with Maria. She would coordinate, and she looks at your schedules and she looks at my schedule, and she says, these are the times where it works for everybody. Okay. And then you pick a time, and for example, we'll say Saturday at 3:15. And then she goes, okay, where do you want to train? So we have 2 locations. We can either do at Oz Park, which is just east of you guys.
Yeah.
Or we can do at my facility, which is west of you guys. I'm about a 13-minute drive. So the pros and cons. So in the summer, we were doing everything at Oz Park because it's very distracting. There's tons of stuff going on at Oz Park. But now that it's colder, it's pretty chill now. I just came from Oz Park before my consult with you. So it's pretty empty, so it's not as distracting. Or you can train at my facility, which it's same thing. It's you're inside a warehouse. Now, the concern is, well, if I'm training inside a warehouse and not outside, is the obedience going to transfer to outside? Okay. And the answer is yes. The difference would be if you train at my facility, Milo's number could be 35 and he's doing perfect, right? And then I'll tell you, you have to find his working number every day when you walk him. So in the neighborhood, it might be 55. Okay, so you're going to just be at a higher number because you're in a more distracting environment. So once you understand the concept, the one thing that holds people back is simply they don't want to go higher. That's the one thing that holds people back. Is that anytime they struggle, I'll ask them like, well, how high did you go? 35. Why didn't you go higher? I felt bad. Well, that's why your dog didn't get better. Okay, because the dog needed a higher consequence in order to reinforce the behavior. Okay, so and I have plenty of clients that most of my clients train at the facility now, with a couple that are still doing Oz Park, but that's really just personal preference on your part. Okay, so if you want to work and worry about like the weather and it being too cold, because you do want to remember you're going to be outside for an hour, right? We can train here. If you're like, nope, we're good, we can bundle up and Milo's fine in the cold, because that's another thing that people forget about is the dog. And the dog is sitting there like shaking, and I'm like, yeah, your dog's too cold. Like, I wouldn't recommend doing outside. Then we can work at Oz Park. Okay, so you still get the occasional distraction, but it's not like it was in the summertime. So if you watch the videos on my YouTube, the ones that we record and we put up, you'll see just exactly how crazy Oz Park gets. And I chose that because it is the busiest park, and we get the results happening during the class at Oz Park. That's how effective the methods are. Okay, it's just a matter of, do you go to the right number? Okay. If you do, or the 6-week program, which is will be right what you need, right about what you need. If you pick a time for 6 weeks, that time would be yours. Okay, plus 1. So for 7 weeks, 3:15 on a Saturday, if available, is your time. No one can take it from you. Now, let's say you cancel one time, no biggie. We push you back. That's why we give everybody 1 extra week, because we know people get sick. We know things happen and all that stuff. But like, let's say you travel a few times or whatever, and you give us enough heads up. What happens is by that 7th week, if you've rescheduled like 3 times, you've used up your priority, but you still have the classes. Okay. Because Saturdays and Sundays and evenings are my busiest times, because most people do 9 to 5. So we have to keep my calendar going. So after you've used a priority, Maria would contact you and say like, hey, somebody needs that 3:15 time. You used up your priority. We got to book them. But these are other times that are open. Okay. And then she would just move you, and you'd finish however many classes you have at that new time. Because before we used to hold the spot, and I would just get backed up because I couldn't do anything with it. Okay. Other questions?
I guess what hours do you train until? Like, what's your latest on like a weekday?
Oh, I train as late as 8, so I finish as 9.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I go pretty late. If we go past like daylight, I highly suggest we do facility, just so that we have light and what we're doing. But otherwise, outside is still an option.
Okay.
Other questions?
I guess so. All of the training is in person then. I guess online, I felt like it looked more like there were in person, but it was recommended to be virtual trainings.
I'd have to check. That might have been like when COVID first hit, because I made a COVID page. So there is a virtual option. Okay. The way the virtual option would work is I would send you videos. Okay. And say like, watch this video and then practice or whatever. And then we have our lesson, and we would kind of talk about that stuff, and we would tweak anything. So like you could also like film yourself so I can see what's going on. And then some stuff we can do in session with the virtual, but like the leash walking one is difficult. Because you need more than the living room space to like do the training. But like, so the leash walking,
or like recall too, I'd assume.
Exactly. If it was other stuff, because I have another client that did virtual, but their dog already had training. So I was just like I was just closing the gap on the stuff that they didn't understand. And then it worked just fine for them because they already had like an understanding. But
cool.
So,
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, puppies I only do virtually.
Okay.
Because puppies, it's simple potty training stuff or whatever. But like for this kind of stuff, in person is better, especially if you're doing the reactivity stuff and the recall. Okay. And my facility is 13,000 square feet. So and the training floor I think is like 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. So it's plenty of space for us to do recall, heel, and all that stuff. So you have plenty of space to walk around and everything.
Awesome.
Other questions?
I can't really think of any. I guess like in terms of the behaviors that we're trying to correct with Milo, they're pretty low on what you would consider to be like
how problematic they are.
Or like ease of training to correct those behaviors. Like, I mean, he's not like biting and attacking other people or dogs, like, which is, we're thankful for that. He doesn't piss and shit in the house either, which is nice. So
people's idea of a good dog is pretty simple: not aggressive, potty trained, and doesn't pull that much. That's usually like if you have that kind of dog, like people, they'll train to sit and stuff, but it's not imperative that the dog be absolutely like, you know, like a soldier and do all these things. Because they're not, you know, they don't bite anybody, they don't jump, they don't pull that much, they don't bark a whole lot, you know, relatively simple. But when you get a dog that has like overstimulation, you know, people tend to compare behaviors always to aggression. Oh, my dog's pretty good, they just have separation anxiety. And I'm like, I hate separation anxiety. Barking and tearing at the kennel and all that stuff, it's nonsense. But because it's not aggressive, people are like, oh, but my dog's not that bad, you know? Yeah. So in your case, overstimulation, super simple. I see it all the time. Okay. I've had about 5 dogs with that same issue in the past, like month and a half, 2 months. And then in most cases, after the first class, the dog is good.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
That makes me so glad to hear that we're not doing
unless he happens to be a drivey dog, which I would let you know, where that's just his, you know, when I say drivey, that's the kind of dog that a trainer wants. Okay, because a drivey dog wants to work. A drivey dog wants like a purpose, you know. But for the average dog owner who just like wants a companion that they can like, you know, share life with and go to the dog park here and there and all that stuff, not the kind of dog they're wanting.
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare.
Okay. What's your view on, like, say if you're taking a dog for a walk and, you know, you typically want the dog by your side, like in step with you. What's your view on, like, say the dog picks up a smell that they find interesting, if you let them explore a little bit to like just kind of, you know, smell the world a little bit while they're out of the house?
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to him enjoying life. It's just when I give him permission.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know. So like for me growing up, like I couldn't just walk out the front door and go to my friend's house. I needed permission, right? So same thing for dogs. Like if he's in a heel, he's at my side. And if we walk for a straight hour in a heel, he's at my side, you know, locked in with what I'm doing. And then I might stop and go, break. And then now you have 15 minutes to be a dog.
Okay.
And then when we walk back home, boom, back to that tight heel. And so your dog becomes what you allow them to practice. So most people allow their dogs to practice, play whenever you want, meet any dog whenever you want, sniff anything you want, pee on anything you want, right? And then they end up with an out-of-control dog because the dog's making decisions to their benefit, right? But when we practice discipline, and it's like, I will give you permission for these things, right? But anytime I say something, you're going to perform that task, you get a disciplined dog, okay? And you get the balance of having control, but not having a dog that's driving you nuts because they bark at. So that barking, that leash reactivity is just frustration. I want to play with that dog. I want to play with that dog. Let me say hi. Let me say hi. Let me say hi. Right? Yeah. But then for everybody else, it's off-putting.
Yes.
But people tend to read reactivity as aggressive.
Yes. Yeah. It is really nice when we're out on a walk and people recognize, like, you know, he's barking at my dog, but it's not, it's not coming from a malicious place. It's coming from like, oh, he's just excited. And it's nice to hear other dog owners say like, oh, he's excited. Like my dog does that too. Don't worry about it. It happens.
Well, and it's funny. I feel like it's like the people that like we regularly run into that seem okay with it. I feel like now I'm like connecting the dots. I feel like those are all dogs that you have trained, right? So like Roxy and Nash and Shadow. I'm like, oh, okay. Like those are dogs that we've encountered that like the owners have like calmed their dogs and then waited for us to do whatever. As opposed to like the other dogs that we'll see and they like other people will cross the street to like be away.
To be yeah. So having control actually, and what ends up happening is you end up doing more with your dog. You know, because people want to do stuff with their dog, but when you don't have control, it becomes unpleasant, and you don't want to just keep putting yourself in an unpleasant scenario.
Yes.
So once you have control, like you'll start to see that you're going to involve him in life a bit more. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah.
How much does Milo weigh?
Between like 40 and 50 pounds.
Okay. So the collar he would need, is he like a thick coated dog?
No.
Is he short? He's got a short coat?
Yeah, except around his neck.
Okay.
Like on the sides.
Okay. The collar he would need, I'd recommend the Doctor 2300, and Maria would send you the info for this. You get them on Amazon. It runs about $287 with tax. Okay.
Okay.
But it's gonna They last a really long time. The most common thing that I see is that the battery, because it's a rechargeable lithium battery like a cell phone, does wear out over the years.
Okay.
You go on the website, you look for the battery for your particular model, you order it, it's like 15, 20 bucks. You can literally just open up your collar, replace the batteries, and then you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Before I wrap up, one common question, or the most common question that I get is, when does the e-collar go away? And I'm sure you've seen Nash and Shadow,
Yeah.
you get the collar on, right?
Yeah.
So do you guys drive?
Yeah.
Have you been on the expressway?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't want to.
Because we'll get a ticket.
With it, right? What happens when there's a cop?
Then we go the speed limit.
Well, speed limit, right?
Yeah.
So that's called opportunistic behavior. All animals do it. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When you need control, you'll have it on. When you don't need it, it's off, right? So anytime you take them out for a walk, take them to a dog park, whatever, it's on. Maybe when you have guests come over in the beginning, it's on, or I don't know how that's going to work out. Every case is different when it comes to that. But yeah, when you need it, you have it on. Okay, because there's a very common thought process of like, if you teach the dog to be a good dog, they'll just choose to be a good dog. That's not true. Okay, I mean, even as humans, and we know better, we are aware of these things. We still push the boundaries and test the laws and stuff, right? And driving is like the most common one that people do. So it's the same thing for dogs. If you tell him heel and you don't have the e-collar on, he's gonna look at you and be like, make me, right? And you'd be like, oh shit, can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the way of the world. It has nothing to do with my methods. It has nothing to do with how much time you put into it and stuff like that. It's simply opportunistic behavior. If you try to get him to do something and he's like, can you make me? And you go, I can't. And he goes, all right, then just keep doing what I'm doing. Okay.
Right.
It's just over time, your need to use it and press the button will become less and less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like my dogs, they still wear their e-collars and they've been trained for 8 years off these trained. And I touch the button like once in a blue moon, The other thing is you can't account for life. So like, I've had clients be with their dogs at the dog park and then some random person decides to set off a firework, and a lot of dogs are scared of fireworks.
Yeah.
So like my pit hates fireworks. She gets super anxious and she's very flighty. So if I'm out with my dogs and someone sets off a firework and I have my e-collar and my pit decides like every man for themselves and tries to take off, I can override that and make her return. Okay, which we talk about in the training sessions because I train for real life. I don't set you up to think that life's going to be perfect because it's not. Shit's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to Nash and Melissa. One day he took off across the street on her and then she had to like 127 and make his ass come back.
Yes.
I bet you that's like the last time you ever thought about doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So stuff like that happens, right? And you want to understand that you're dealing with a living, breathing creature, an animal, right? That can make their own decisions as well. And they make decisions that are that benefit them. I know a lot of people talk about like, oh, the dog just wants to please the owner. I'm like, that's bullshit. That's just like some stuff that positive reinforcement trainers come up with. I'm not saying that some dogs don't like to work, because yes, there's dogs that like to work and they want purpose, but it's not so much to please the owner.
Yeah.
Okay, still.
I feel like Milo wants us to please him.
Yeah, he's very like self-interest driven.
Yes.
So that's usually how it rolls. Okay. So Maria will reach out. She'll send you a contract form. She'll give you the pricing for the 6 week, plus you get the credit of your consultation credited towards that. So she'll send you the make and model for the e-collar. Go ahead and return the one that you have. And I believe it comes with a 1-year warranty. I believe there might be an option to extend to a 3-year warranty via Amazon, just personal preference. When you get your e-collar, do read the manual and test it out. Don't like actually use it on Milo, but just fiddle with the dial. If you see that it jumps from like 10 to like 100 or 30, like.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Hold on.
We lost him.
I think it's just frozen.
Let's see.
All right, you're back.
Yep,
Okay.
there we are. Okay.
If you get a remote that is jumping all over the place, you have a bad remote. So then you'd want to exchange it. Okay, you should be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 127. So when you try to turn the dial, it'll be noticeable. Okay, but this way you don't show up with a dud and then we can't do anything, because I've tried to like work with them. It's just terrible. You want to exchange it as soon as you know that. Let us know. We'll just push back. I will follow up with you once you're confirmed with videos. You don't need to do anything with the videos in terms of applying it to Milo. You just need to watch them. Okay? Watching the videos will get you acclimated to everything. It'll help you understand the concept of the training in the beginning, so that when we show up, we can just jump right into the training and get the most out of those classes.
Okay.
Okay. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And if you just have any concerns about how the e-collar works and stuff, feel free to go to my YouTube channel. And they're all uncut, unedited. You could just, pick a lesson and then watch it. Lesson ones are always good to watch, just because no one knows what they're doing. And you can see just how effective the training is and how it actually works throughout the class. Okay. Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you guys. If you have any questions,
you too,
let us
Jesse.
know. Otherwise, Maria will be reaching out soon. Okay.
You're perfect.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.